Hello, in today's video we're going to take a look at a late 70s Ampeg model VT-22. The VT-22 is a 212 amplifier, has two channels with two inputs, 1 and 2, two separate volumes, treble, mid-range, bass. It also has a range of switches up here on the top. I don't know if you can see them at this angle, but excuse me. You see the switches up here that change the way in which the EQ responds, and also the sensitivity for the inputs. There's also reverb and a master volume. Over here on the switches, we have a standby, polarity, and power switch. We will change to a 3-prong power cord, which will pretty much nullify the polarity switch in the process. This is a huge amp, very hefty, very beastly amplifier. Weighs 88 pounds according to the old literature, which was apparently Ampeg tried to twist into a point of sale, saying, you know, that 88 pounds was a sign of quality. Today you probably would want to put wheels on this thing if you're going to gig with it, because 88 pounds can get pretty old pretty fast, as I have found out just simply moving it around my living room. So we're going to take advantage though of the fact that a customer wanted this thing overhauled. We'll take a look at all the work that was done, and then we'll take a listen to it while we have it. So if that sounds like something of interest to you, stick around and enjoy. Okay, here's this Ampeg VT-22 out on the bench, and the first thing that we notice here on the lid, there are quite a few screws that pull off the lid, but we have a handy dandy schematic given to us up here on the top. Which is nice to read. It's printed very small, but it's very legible compared to some of the schematics you'll find online. This might be a little more legible. On the underside of the top, we have an Accutronic spring reverb tank. This one looks like it's dated. Let's see. If I'm not mistaken, and that's the correct date code, then I believe that is 1976 or 75, perhaps. Anyway, there's that. Yeah, it could be 75 or 77. The schematic itself is actually dated 1977, so that gives us a pretty good estimate there as well for the date on this model. Let's remove the top here and set it aside. Sorry if you're having trouble seeing while I do this. And let's show the work that was done here. You can see the caps that have been replaced. There are a couple here. These are 47s. These are 100. Here are the can caps, the original ones that have been replaced. I've actually replaced these by putting in a couple of little turret strips in there. There are some more over on this side. I replaced this can with these three. And these are 500 volts, so if you have one of these, make sure you get the voltage correct, because these will want to see 500 volts. These can stand to be 450 or even perhaps 350, because they are in series and and the voltage is divided among them, so they won't see anywhere near the 900 volts total power handling that they're capable of. You know, the construction of this thing leaves a little bit of something to be desired, but this is late 70s construction for you. Just about every amp manufacturer was going to this. You can see the tubes are all direct mounted to the boards. Here's V1, V2, V3, V4s over here. And then you've got your reverb tubes and everything are back here on the backboard. But yeah, this is not not the most ideal of situations. At least it does label everything for you, R50, R49, C15, so you can go to the schematic and you can see that everything has a label here on the schematic as well, so at least you can tell which of these resistors and capacitors you're looking at on the actual board. So that makes it a little bit easier, but still, if you had to change one of those, it would still be a big pain in the ass because you'd have to take the entire board out and desolder probably half of the the wires on one side and to flip the thing up and go through all that nonsense. And that's just a big pain in the ass if you ever have to work on one of these and actually get under the board. Luckily, I was able to get away with just replacing the power capacitors and wiring in a new 3-prong cord. The cord that these came with originally looked like 3-prong cords, and they looked like they had a place for a 3rd prong, but they did not. The 3rd prong was actually just a dummy, and it would have had 2 prongs from the very beginning. As in fact, the schematic even shows just a 2-prong configuration over there, and there is no 3rd prong. I did also remove, there is a death cap in here. You can see here is a death cap, and it was in this position tucked in down here behind the 3 switches on front. Here's your 3 switches. The polarity is switches here, and that death cap was tucked in right down there. At the moment, the polarity switch is completely non-functional. It won't do anything. So so that's one change you'll notice. These are actually original. You see down here, you see some diodes for the rectifier on the board, and they're on the other side of the board. And these look like maybe, oh, somebody came in here and replaced those diodes and pulled those out. But I got an inspection mirror under there and also confirmed it on the schematic. Those are original, and I believe these are even in the original configuration. It was a bit confusing at first, but I believe those are original. So I might even be the first person who's been into this thing. Pretty much just gave it a clean, and changed all the tubes as well. And we'll flip this thing upside down here in just a moment or two and take a look at the tubes. But the customer elected just to have it completely gone through, change all the tubes. I cleaned all of the pots. Some of these pots were a bit difficult to get to. You can see they have their own board here, and down inside some of these it's kind of hard to get your sprayer down in there, but I managed. Spray out all these switches as well to make sure they're good and clean. Sprayed out the inputs, sprayed out all, everywhere where there's an input or output jack. Spray all of those. There is a hum balance adjustment here. Sprayed that out and worked that. Pots. It just gave it pretty much a once over. Sprayed out all of the sockets for all of the tubes. Which needed it, actually. These preamp sockets were very dirty, and they benefited greatly from a good spray. So yeah, that's where we are now. All the necessary work has been done, so this is what the guts look like after that work has been accomplished. We'll flip it over here now and take a look at the underside. Okay, here's the amp flipped over, and this gives us an opportunity to kind of see the back. Here are our speaker jacks, our ohm selector, foot switch. This little switch I think may have been added, and I'm not sure what that does. I can get in there and check that out here in a bit and report on that. I may put a note up on the screen there, but I'm not sure if that's original or not. I'll have to check that. Here we have some preamp outputs. This is power amp in. There's our hum balance pot, an AC outlet. Here is a fuse, and we have a nice handy wrap for our cord here, which is always handy in a live situation to wrap that cord up, get it out of the way. Here are all of our old cap cans. Here we had 3 of those. Here's our funky 6K11 tube, which is like 3 triodes in one tube. This is a 6FQ7. We have several 12AX7s, a mix of 12AX7s, a 12AU7, and a 12DW7, I believe, and I think that DW is right here in the third position. But the DW is actually a, it's basically one half of a 12AX7 and a half of a 12AU7, if I'm not mistaken, in the same envelope. So it's kind of a mixture of tubes in there. Here are our new JJ power tubes, and we opted to go for the 7027s from JJ. So far, at least, they sound pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, this is actually dated 1977. So yeah, 7's on the year code. Looks like 17th week for that one, 36th week for this one. So we are in 1977, it looks like. There are some other codes here on the chassis, and on these little parts here as well. I have no idea what they mean. They might mean something to an Ampeg expert, which I am not. But there they are, nonetheless. But yeah, there is the underside. Lots of tubes in this thing. Costs a small fortune to retube it, but that's what the customer liked. So that's what we have done. Now let's seal this thing all back up and see what she sounds like. One other thing before we check out the tone, I wanted to point out. Look at the way this thing was mounted. You can see it. There are some big steel plates along each side. One on this side and one way over here on this side. They are held together with the back protector, which protects the tubes and allows ventilation with the little screen there. But all of this stuff here allows you to move this amp. To set it up so that you can work on it, and you don't have to have any kind of amp cradle. So that's cool. That's nice and handy. Something that Ampeg thought about. Anytime that any of these manufacturers were showing some indication, they were thinking about the lowly repair guy. Usually scores them some points in my book, and this is one of those examples where obviously they were thinking about the repair guys. So that's another kind of cool thing with this amp. One more thing I wanted to point out here, the differences in the schematics. This one obviously is a later revision. This is the one that's on the amp itself, the example that I have in front of me, and it's dated 6th month of 1977. The one that I found online that was the most legible, at least, right off the bat, was dated 6th of 1970. So 7 years there of a lot of revisions and stuff going on. You probably, if you're a tech, you probably want to open the amp up before you order any parts and see which exact model you have, because for one thing, they changed the values of some of these caps. You'll see here, these are 100 microfarads in this position, and in the same position on this schematic, they are 70 microfarads, which, I mean, probably either value would work in that position, but they've done this for a reason, I'm sure, and they probably didn't want the amp to sound worse. So I would go with the later revision if it was me, if you have the later version of this amp especially. So you might want to pop open the amp and see if your schematic is still present on the amp itself, if you're going to service one of these, and see what caps it actually calls for. So yeah, that's another note. One more thing here too, you'll notice that it says, the Ampeg company, a division of Magnavox, and the 1970 version also has Magnavox on it. And of note, the original tubes in this amp were still labeled Magnavox tubes on them, so they were very likely the original tubes as well. So Just another cool, interesting point. But yeah, definitely you want to check your schematic that's in the actual amp, if you still have the schematic, so that you can figure out, or just look at the caps themselves and don't just trust the first schematic you come across online to figure out which caps you need when you're replacing these. But here you can kind of get an idea of what the amp is all about. You know, here you have V1 is a 12AX7 tube, V2. This is our 6K11, so that's a different circuit, but our V2 is down here for channel 2. That input is also 12AX7, and you could probably do something internally to jumper these channels and get more gain out of this amp if you wanted to do something like that, but I haven't been asked to do that, so I'm not gonna. But yeah, that gives you an idea of what this thing is all about. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a listen to the... Okay, we're going to check out the tones of this thing. For the purpose of this portion of the demo, we're going to use a 1986 Fender 52 Tele reissue. Right now we're going through channel 1 on the amp. It's up about halfway. Master volume is pretty low. Have some reverb up about halfway, and we'll start with the EQs in their upright positions, and the mid-range selector is in the middle, and the high selector is in the middle as well. Clean it up, you can back off the volume.
Really clean stuff to really hot overdrive, especially with the mid-range cranked, and if you put it in the middle position, the selectors actually do something, and I think this was a concept that was sort of copied by Moog Electronics when they made the Lab Series stuff for Gibson. These switches are actually pretty useful for moving the middle position of the pots that they're associated with. And plus the sensitivity on the inputs does do a lot as well. If you want more clean headroom, obviously you can take the sensitivity down, and for recording, if you want real clean recordings, you can take the sensitivity all the way down to -9 and keep it a lot cleaner. So pretty versatile amp, pretty innovative and cool for its time period. So yeah, that's the late 1970s Ampeg VT-22.